And gentlemen, welcome back to another episode. We are officially back with the pod. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Shout out to everybody that's rolling in right now. If you are listening to this post live stream, we are available on all platforms. I'm your host, Marcus. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm not here alone. I got my guys with me. I got Landon. I got Colts Film Room. Colts Film Room, how we doing?
Great day to be alive. Took a brief Twitter hiatus, 48 hours. That's how long I lasted. I'm addicted. I'm married to the game. That's what someone said in my comments. That's absolutely true. We'll break it all down. I'm a lot. I think I I didn't I did watch the film, but I didn't post anything about it. Took 48 hours to kind of gather my thoughts on where the Colts go from here, and we'll have a chance to kind of talk about it.
Hey, we all need a hiatus every now and then. Appreciate you for tuning in, though, and we're definitely going to hop into it, talk about this game. Landon, how we doing, my guy?
Well, doing good. Y'all had a longer hiatus from this than me. I feel like last week I had to do the show all alone. It was just a total mess. I didn't know what I was doing. You're talking to myself, going around in circles. Unfortunately, I was correct about how this weekend played off. That's not a good thing most of the time. But yeah, it's other than that, I'm doing great. Holidays are coming up. We got a few more days of work, then I'm off the rest of the year. So yeah, just trying to hang in there. That's all we can do.
Hey, that is correct, man. We all got to hang in there, especially after last week's performance. If we were watching, we're going to be giving you the reaction to the game. The Indianapolis Colts headed to Mile High to play the Denver Broncos, and of course, Landis gave a preview of the show last week. If you didn't tune in. And he was right about it, apparently, from what he's saying. Tune in, check it out. Link's going to be in description for the preview video.
What I'm saying, you mean you didn't even watch it?
No, I wasn't here.
Watch the show?
I wasn't here. It's literally
I tune in when I can make it.
Yeah, I was gone this whole time.
Left me hanging, man.
Yeah, at least I was honest.
That's true. Sometimes, look, if anything we've learned this year, especially when it involves the Colts, sometimes it is better just to lie, right? It's better to lie. So I would have rather you just lied to me.
No, I can't do that.
I mean, you watched it and enjoyed it, and I did a good job.
I can't lie to y'all, man. I lied to you about some score previews, but that's pretty much it. But to hop into this game, the Indianapolis Colts, like I said, headed to Mile High to play the Denver Broncos. They wound up losing this game 13-31, and at some point, in my opinion, it looked like they had a chance to actually get it done, but the end of that second half, in which we're going to talk about, was just chaotic. But we are here. Like I said, I got my guys with me. We're going to hop into this game. But the first topic of discussion we got to talk about is Anthony Richardson's performance. Anthony Richardson, of course, when the good got worse, I call him the cardiac coach, which you guys know that already. But Anthony Richardson was 17 for 38, 172 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but he had a rushing touchdown. So that was the bright spot, and that was only in the first half. But his performance, of course, a lot of people are in air about the situation, especially going into the topic we're going to talk about later with the whole regime and everything of that nature. But I want to get Landon's thoughts on how do you thought Anthony Richardson performed this game. Of course, we're going to talk about the offense and the defense, but let's solo him out first. What was your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, not to sugarcoat it. I mean, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for him. And it's not just, I mean, I feel like we go through this all the time. Like, this is like an every week thing, right? Where, like, it wasn't just him. Like, nobody stepped up and helped him. But at the end of the day, like, you got to be better. And now this is another game. So now we're 4 weeks post benching, right? Or technically 5 weeks, but 4 games post benching. And it seems like every game he's kind of regressed just a little bit more. And it seems like right now, this game specifically, this felt like the Houston game before he was benched. This felt like the Green Bay game. A little bit of bad habits started creeping back up. So we'll see. I mean, there's still 3 more games left of the season. Even though it's a long shot for the playoffs, probably not. A lot of Colts fans are kind of done with the season already, but there's still 3 more games to be played. So that's really kind of what we're looking at now. Is where does he go from here? Where does his team go from here? Is there anything you can hang your hat on in these next 3 games that gives you hope that moving forward, he can be the franchise quarterback? That's really all that matters. It's the next 3 games. So As far as this game goes, though, yeah, it wasn't good enough. You can't continue to complete, sub 50-40% of your passes, not being able to sustain drives, turn the ball over in crucial situations. It can't happen. So, yeah, that's just why I land on it.
Hey, I agree. I agree 100%. Got a few comments here. He said we are waiting for Chris till later, and then we got one.
We'll get to Chris. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to
about it. Here's kind of what I have to say real quick. I agree with Landon. It wasn't like we don't have to sit here and sugarcoat anything. Like it wasn't, but like, I think it's the type of thing where Anthony Richardson just needs to get to the offseason. I'm just gonna be honest. He needs a healthy offseason to go look at this entire roller coaster of a year or two and finally have a healthy offseason to work on the things that he has to work on. And that's where I don't think we're in a scenario where like he's magically, maybe he like plays a little bit better versus some teams that are mailing it in. Maybe he doesn't, and this thing totally collapses. Regardless, I think my opinion will stay the same. Like I don't think, no matter how ugly it gets from here on out, I have no expectations, because right now it's just like throwing darts at a dartboard without a bullseye, where it's like we're just going to keep throwing this and that. And like right now, the whole organization needs to go back to the drawing board and say, this was a year we were supposed to essentially run it back. But we were a game out of the playoffs. We brought back a lot of guys that probably deserve second contracts with the team and definitely would have been sought out elsewhere. And this was the leap that we were supposed to take, and it went completely the opposite direction. So did Anthony Richardson play well in this game? No. Will he never play well when your running back fumbles at the 1 yard line? And one of the most abysmal things that I've ever seen, you call a double pass where the wide receiver can't find the laces and it's just sniffed out from the entire thing, where your number one receiver, so-called, fumbles a ball and then you have the punt return situation. It was like, it was a Murphy's Law half. What could go wrong must go wrong, or whatever that is. It's so like, again, this is Anthony Richardson is its own thing, but like what we said all year, it's not like this offense hasn't let him down consistently. So it's not just, this isn't a good Anthony Richardson performance. This isn't good offense. Like,
well, it's not even just those things you mentioned. I mean, even just like the little things, right? Like the constant holding penalties, putting them in
the penalties,
first and 20, second and 15. I mean, like, it's hard to play quarterback like that.
How do you? It's hard to call plays. Like, how do you call plays? Like, I would love the chat, or maybe anyone who comes across this later, to brainstorm some 2nd and 20 plays. They don't exist. It's because the defense is expecting screen. It's expecting maybe a run. They're playing 20 yards off the sticks. Like, exactly. The holding penalties is absolutely a big deal of this. So again, I think after losing a game like this in that way and in that fashion, finish the season the right way. Don't let yourself spiral. Like, everyone can say, oh, we're into tanking. No, you're not. You're going to watch on Sunday, and if they lose to the New York Giants, it's going to be fire. Everyone fire. You're not. No one actually believes that. They can convince themselves they believe that. They don't. Finish the season the right way, and then you go into this offseason and you say, I want to look at everything from training camp, because this team is a team that notoriously starts slow. I want to look at everything from strength and nutrition. I want to look at everything from the scheme. I want to look at everything about staffing, and I want to go back to the drawing board and fix everything. And I think that at least Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson deserve the shot to go do that. And pulling the plug would be insane to do that at this point, in my opinion. That being said, you don't get as long of a leash. So I understand where, like, I don't think people are wrong. I'm just not crazy and we'll get into all that later, but I don't think we're going to see anything. Like, he's not magically going to like turn anything around. It's going to happen over an off season. It's going to happen over the course of next season, if it's going to happen at all. So right now it's just like a broken thing that we're just throwing darts at the perimeter of a dartboard and hoping that you turn out with a W. Because even in the first half, it's not like Anthony Richardson. I mean, he's a gift. Like, he did all the things we know he can do. And he converted that huge 3rd and 10 to Josh Downs. That was big. There were some good, there was definitely some good moments in this game. So I don't want to write
the scripted plays and the scripted stuff at the beginning of the game. That's good, right? Like it's all good. Like he made some tough throws into some tight windows, converted some crucial downs. Obviously had the big run for the touchdown. Like that's all great, and that's what you want to see. But like we haven't seen that for a full game yet. Like you haven't seen him be able to do it.
And yes, and again, like Anthony Richardson is not, but also like, I mean, I don't know how you look in the second half. Anthony Richardson didn't fumble the ball on the 1 yard line. Anthony Richardson evaded a free runner and threw that ball to Michael Pittman, I believe, and he fumbled that. He didn't play special teams and give them beautiful field position. He didn't call the double pass and then not find the laces and take forever. So like these are all these things where it's like Anthony Richardson absolutely deserves credit, but I will not let the rest of the situation, like this is a terrible situation right now. Like, and it's just not going to fix itself overnight. There's still a lot of talent in the room. It's can they go back to the drawing board and fix this? Because this is regression from 2023. 2023 was a good year and they didn't make the playoffs. They shouldn't have been anywhere close with Gardner Minshew, but Gardner Minshew had an awesome situation around him. It's the same players, same coaching staff. And why is that not the case for Anthony Richardson? Everyone just regressed. So that's why I think there's going to be a lot of changes to be made moving forward.
Hey, I agree, man. This wasn't the best situation for Shane or Richardson, honestly, especially Richardson. I mean, it looked like a lot of moments he was out there left by himself, but we can go ahead and segue into this offensive conversation. Just a few comments. Shout out to Jay. He said most pressure QB since week 11, Anthony Richardson. But, like I said, this offense didn't do him any justice with the offensive line, the holding situation, the drops, the fumbles, even the A.D. Mitchell situation. This offense, of course, it just hasn't been looking as what we would expect. There's a lot of vets on that offensive line, but nobody can hold a toothpick or anything of that nature. But what was your thoughts on the offensive performance? We know what Richardson did, but like I said, I felt like, honestly, Richardson was out there by himself. Of course, Taylor had a lot of yards, but we wanted him to get in the end zone for so many weeks, and the one chance he did, he dropped it before he got in there. But get to Landon. What was your thoughts on the offensive performance?
Horrendous. It's terrible. I mean, like what? There's not really much to like go over, right? It's bad. It's bad. Jonathan Taylor, and I even put this. Jonathan Taylor, biggest mistake of the game, right? Well, maybe it's a toss-up, right?
No. I refuse to believe that is I believe in momentum.
I do too.
I'm a big believer in momentum. That you go up, that would have put him up 20 to 10 or 20 to 7?
27.
It was 20 to 7.
The game wouldn't have been locked up. But at that moment, I'm thinking this is the best first half that the Colts have played all year in a must-win game. That's the best way. That's the way that I look at it. Because it's been the same thing where it's like they are the worst second and third quarter team, anecdotally at least, in the league. Like it's not even close. Like they start off fast. Maybe they get a little first quarter lead. Second and third quarter, what goes wrong must go wrong. All that, and then they kind of save it at the fourth quarter, and that's kind of what happened in the Jets game.
Really, it's not even they save it. Usually, it's actually Anthony Richardson saving them in the fourth quarter. A lot.
Yeah, really, yeah. And listen, like, so that's the way that I feel. I think Jonathan, and we'll get into some of these players when we talk about future of the Colts later. But like with Jonathan Taylor, I saw a lot of takes, and this is why I'm glad I took my brief hiatus, because I would have entertained them. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, listen, Jonathan Taylor made one of the worst decisions I've seen to add to the list of painful things that this fan base has seen. He has also bailed the Colts out a billion times before he's held them back. So like, I'm not going to say that like Chris Ballard made some sort of mistake bringing back one of the better running backs in the league. Like that's not true. And we'll get into more about Jonathan Taylor because he's not absolved of blame. The mistake is absolutely horrendous, but I would take Jonathan Taylor on my team 10 times out of 10. That's just a fact.
But I mean, all right. So now to get back to the rest of the offense, right? It's Pittman, not great. Alec Pierce went out. A.D. Mitchell, horrendous again. Josh Downs, kind of made a few plays here and there, but he's about the only one that
Only guy I can trust.
Yeah, he's about the only guy that consistently steps up for this team, and then you get into the offensive line play, which once again this week was horrendous. The right guard spot, Mark Glowinski, for as tough as he played, a couple weeks ago in that New England game, coming in on short rest and no training camp, no off season, anything
Zach
like that.
Allen took him to church. Yeah,
like sunk it. Center spot, Danny Pinter. For some reason, they didn't go with Bordellini in this. They went right back to Danny Pinter this week, second week in a row.
It's the continuity thing. Here's again, as soon as Kelly didn't play that game, you kind of just like people. I think a lot of people that should owe Ryan Kelly an apology. That's what I agree. Say. I think a lot of people owe Ryan Kelly an apology because they thought it was bad and then they realized it can get much, 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 much worse. It's tough. It just hasn't been good enough. And that's kind of goes back to my original point. It's like, it's not going to get any better. Like these are things where Michael Pittman Jr., to his credit, at least has battled through injuries that would send most to season ending IR. It seems like that's what's came out. And he's been battling it all year. And like, he's been solid at best. Alec Pierce, in my opinion, I've said that the same things I've said about Alec Pierce I think are true. You just have a quarterback.
We talked about this at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Like he is not sudden enough to affect the game from 1 to 10 yards. He just can't do it. However, he has an elite trait and one of the best go ball and post receivers in the league. So he's going to make an NFL roster and he's going to be a big contributor because he can flip the game around.
If Alec Pierce is your fourth guy, that is fine.
I'd go as far as third. I'd go as far as a third.
Well, I just mean ideally, like you want Pittman and Josh Downs to be your 1 and 2. You still need to.
I see what you're saying.
Like you still need to find.
But right now they don't have a guy. Like I'm sitting there watching this film sometimes, and I'm like, can we just get like a guy who can just like beat a hinge, like and run a hinge route and just create some separation on the outside, something where it's like we don't need like to like just some like little thing to get to spark the offense, not a double pass. Why don't we get a guy who can just move the chains because he's better than the corner? Like that's where the Colts just don't have that guy. Now they do. It's Adonai Mitchell, but he's so unreliable at this point in his career that you cannot play him. And that's it. It's like I see this guy run routes, and I'm like, how is this not working? Like, how is this guy not playing? And I've said it multiple times throughout the season, and then every single time he proves why he shouldn't be starting out there. And it's like, it's harsh words, and I still think Adonai Mitchell can be a good player. Like, but talk about a guy who needs to go to the drawing board. That's him, because it's tough right now.
It definitely is, man. Like I said, he's still got room to grow. He's still rookie, so maybe next year he can step up. I'm not writing
Adonai Mitchell off at all. I still believe in some of the stuff that he probably leads the league in separation. I still think that's probably the case. Like he can run routes, but there's like so many other things to playing receiver that he just has not.
And that's when your vets should step up too, honestly. You shouldn't put that much trust in a rookie. That's what I was thinking.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the double pass was a bad call. It's probably Shane Steichen's worst play call he's ever had. And I do think sometimes, I got too excited. I do think sometimes we judge some of those now I don't think this play is an exception. We judge some of those trick plays on the result and not actually like, was it a good call or not? In theory, that scores. The execution was just flat out terrible.
I mean, if Ryman holds up on that block to Benito, if Ryman gets in the way of Benito, that's a completed pass to Anthony Richardson.
So like
with AD Mitchell completely boneheading the throw, whatever he's doing.
The way that I see it is like if that play had worked and Benito didn't make that play, people would have been like, what a call from Shane Steichen. Way to get the spark back. And because it looks so stupid, everyone's like, worst call ever since the punt. No, the fake punt was stupid. Like that was a stupid play call because even the best result was maybe a timeout. Like that's
chance to work.
They're not in the same category for me. Those are the play calls that you live with because if they work. Now it was executed horrendously. Like if you look at it, AD takes, a 7-step drop basically trying to find the laces. Like, and that's part of it, and that's part of the execution and all those kind of things. But they had to look for it. Everything looked good until Benito.
I think like this is where like we get into like the Shane Steichen discussion of like why is AD Mitchell in that position to begin with?
I totally agree. Like, I think, is that a play that they've repped the entire time with AD Mitchell out there like that? And then why? And then you look at it, it's like, why AD Mitchell? And I'd have to go back. Maybe they set that play up. Maybe we're stupid and they've set that play up. I think that's something Shane Steichen would have said in his explanation if that had been the case. But I mean, I totally agree. This is your least trustworthy player. Like, and it's not really close. Like, he's a guy that, like, you can trust to win the route. And then I don't know what's going to happen from there. He could run out of bounds when he should. He could score. He could give a dead leg move that doesn't work, and then it goes for a touchdown. So, like, he's the type of guy that you just can't rely on in those type of scenarios. And then you start to ask yourself, was Alec Pierce injured at that point in the game?
Yes.
So then you ask yourself, is the wide receiver room as deep as we thought it was going into the year? Because I thought it was really deep.
Well, Ashton Doolin was out too. He was hurt as well.
Would people have felt any better if Ashton Doolin was?
Yes. Sorry, but I would 100% take Doolin.
So yeah, I mean, like, you were down to basically AD Mitchell or Anthony Gold, right? And that was it. So,
I mean, none of that. Yeah. So, like, yeah, it's tough. It's one of those plays that kind of like the fourth down play last year that you can scrutinize until we're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, they were still down in that game for no reason because of a fumble of the special teams and the fumble at the 1 yard line or whatever, the two fumbles, the whatever you want to call them, the bunker.
They had three
They had no business calling that play at all anyway, because they should have been up 2 scores and be able to control this game on the ground, which Denver really couldn't stop. And then that's where this game should have gone, and it didn't, because they literally fumbled it their entire. They, no pun intended, fumbled it away. But that's something they'll have to live with. I do think that this is, unfortunately, like a broken team that's just gone through adversity after adversity after adversity. And, you know, maybe they walk out of that game after they find a way. The double pass hits for a touchdown. They come back in that game. And, like, would anyone really feel good about their playoff chances? Like, given the fact that it was so hard to win that game. Like, this is just a broken team that's not playing with the same fundamentals as they were playing last year. And it's something that you have to go back to the drawing board and fix. And I don't necessarily think going back on the coaching carousel will get there, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and you make a good point. A team like the Colts had over 300 yards in total, and still wind up losing this game. And credit to the defense, like I say, even though the defense couldn't really do anything in the second half, towards the fourth, because it was pretty much over at that point. But they
didn't give up 31. The box score tells a very bad story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know.
You have the pick six, you have the special teams debacle, you have essentially a garbage time touchdown to Cortland Sutton in there. Yeah. So, like, I don't think that tells the full story. But
no, I was giving credit to the defense because that was the best part.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, that was the best part most of the season. The defense, again, they held the Broncos to pretty much nothing all game. Bo Nix had one of his worst games.
It hasn't been most of the season. I mean, this was probably one of their better games of the year. Like, they are very deserving of criticism for the way they've played majority of this season. They had a good game this week for sure. Like, you can't blame them this week, but I'm not going to sit here and, like, you know, off of one game where they finally showed up. And this is just more of the bigger picture thing too. Is like, this team, for the life of them, cannot play a complete complementary game of football. One unit shows up, the other one doesn't. Vice versa.
That's not the case last year, and it's like, that's what's crazy. It was just a regression year, and it's really not great.
Is this regression, or was last year the opposite? Because now, like, regardless of Shane Steichen, right? Regardless, a lot of these players are the same players that were there for the collapse in 2021, the Matt Ryan year in 2022. Last year, a lot of them rebounded.
So you're saying it's a players thing, not a Shane Steichen thing?
Absolutely.
I agree.
Okay,
I think it is.
I can get behind that. Here's
but that's also not absolving Shane Steichen as well.
Oh, I agree. I think
he's the head coach.
I've been a staunch supporter.
Like, Shane Steichen, for whatever, regardless of whether you like him as a play caller or not, like, that is not his only job. His only job is not play caller of the Indianapolis Colts. He is the head coach. At the end of the day, the buck stops with him. It's him and Chris Ballard. They control everything: defense, special teams, personnel decisions, offensive play calling, off-season moves. Shane Steichen's a big proponent in the draft. Anthony
Is that true?
Yes, 100%. It's 100%. All this stuff.
I think if you go look at
criticize Shane Steichen's play calling, that's perfectly fine. But we're not just going to let him completely off the hook. But at the end of the day, point being is everybody wants to talk about last year is like, oh man, like these guys finally came together after a bad 2022 season and all that. These are the same guys. And so you have 1 year out of the last 4 years where guys actually tended to either rebound to playing average football or played a little bit better. Every other year, this year included, there has been regression of some point.
So we're teetering that line.
What is the norm and which one's the not?
So we're teetering that line of talking future of the Colts. Should we just start talking about it? Or is there anything else we want to talk about?
Yes, go ahead.
And this is where I think Landon and I probably
I want to put this comment up there too, because I think this matters, right? And this is a point that I made at the beginning of this season that I got a lot of pushback on.
I'm not sure I totally agree though.
They played.
How did they play? How did they play versus some really good offenses this year? Like defensively, this is a defensive comment, right? Playing a lot of.
This is a team comment in general. The team in general, whether it's offense, defense, special teams. This is an ever-encompassing thing. They did get the benefit of a really, really soft schedule towards the middle and end of last year, and that padded that number quite a bit. Now, yes, they played close, but close is only great in horseshoes and hand grenades. You don't get benefit for playing close and losing, in my opinion. I'm not going to give you props for losing games.
That's not. I will because versus Buffalo, I don't think anyone else on that team threw 5 picks or threw basically 5 picks, 3 picks. I'll give them credit. Josh Allen just put up 45 on the Lions, and they held their own in that game. Like the defense didn't lose that game, the offense did. That was what led to the end of a benching. In Minnesota, was it the fact that they couldn't even get to the red zone one singular time, and it was the defense that held them, that actually kept them in that game and got turnovers? In Denver, in that first half, they were playing complimentary football until the offense had literally historically the worst half that you could ever have in a football game, basically. I don't know. I saw that.
Second worst.
Second worst. All right. I kind of skimmed it over. It's painful. I do agree that they played a lot of backup quarterbacks. I would also say when they played caliber quarterbacks, it wasn't Bo Nix was supposed to slice and dice this soft defense, and that didn't happen. He had 3 picks. Like, it's one of those things where I like.
Yeah, but are we giving the defense? I mean, like the Zaire played a hell of a game, right? He played.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, like he played a hell of a game. But other than that, I mean, like Bo Nix was throwing it to the chest of these defenders, right? Like this wasn't one of those things where it's like, he was getting confused out there and the Colts were doing all this exotic thing.
Sure, that's a 1-game sample size, but then when you go look at like how they played versus Minnesota, honestly, at certain points, not the second half, but like parts of, I guess that you can't really count Detroit, but who's stopped Detroit? They played well versus Buffalo. They played well versus Minnesota. I know Miami had the backup quarterback, but they still have Tua and Jalen Waddle. That wasn't much of an issue. Take me through the schedule. They played well versus the Steelers. Are
we talking about what do you mean Miami?
I'm just saying they played pretty well versus Miami, the defense. I mean, they were playing a backup quarterback, but
they played a third string quarterback.
Fine. But fine. Take that game out. When you take the majority of the back half of the year post that brutal Jacksonville game, they strung together some good performances in the gauntlet. The daunting gauntlet. It wasn't the defense that was holding them back. That I'm willing to say. So like, and a lot of the guys that they brought back were on the defense. So like that's where the type of thing. I'm not ready to say that like this was a mistake bringing back guys that were key contributors, because like if the shoe was on the other foot and DeForest Buckner or who was a free agent, Grover Stewart was the best nose tackle. remind me of the free agents, like
Kenny Moore.
Kenny Moore was having the season he did elsewhere while someone else was getting toasted. You don't think that, like, if the shoe was on the other foot, it'd be different? Like, I think it was a reasonable decision to bring these guys back after the season they had in 23, albeit versus backup quarterbacks. But like, it's still the NFL. Like, they still, and you're faced there with like, how do we evaluate this? 2022 was literally one of the worst, like, seasons from a franchise that you can think about. Like, no offense to Jeff Saturday, but it's never a great sign to hire an ESPN analyst as an interim coach. It's just not a good sign. So the fact that they were even competitive in 2023 was a shock to me. To do that all in 1 year with Gardner Minshew, they had a backup quarterback on their own team. So like, that's the kind of thing where like, I don't know if I'm ready to totally say that like they totally tricked themselves into thinking that they couldn't compete.
But they were still, I mean, this is still like, what is this now? 3 years in a row of like, this year has been.
I do understand that.
This year has been better for sure. I don't think that's an argument. They have improved a little bit this year on defense, but this is 3 years in a row now where like you're still ranking in the bottom. Well, maybe not this season, but even before that, they're 28th on defense. The next year, 28th on defense. This year, what are you? I mean,
find it for me. I know that by EPA they are the fourth most improved defense from weeks like 9 to 15. So
that's just the secondary.
That's just the secondary.
Secondary. I know what coach you're referring to.
It would help if I read a stat, but like I do think that there it is. I do, and we can get to because I do agree with that sentiment. I think when you look at this Colts offseason, and let's get into this. Let's just talk regime right now. We covered that.
Right.
Where do the Colts go from here? And that's the biggest question right now, because you look at this entire thing. Chris Ballard has been a general manager here for a long time. Like, it didn't start off the way he wanted it to when Andrew Luck retired after year one and they had made the playoffs and he won executive of the year and he had these great draft picks. And it didn't start off the way he wanted. And then the process kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then you ended up in 2022, which was like a dark day for this franchise. We got guys gambling. We got guys not going to treatment. We have an ESPN analyst because they need to assess the culture in the building. Everything had totally fell off. They decided to retain Chris Ballard and try and start over. And in my opinion, they have asked for everything that has come their way, because if there was let me ask you this question. If there was a general manager, and it's hard to picture because he's been around for so dang long, but if there was Joe Schmo was the new GM and was hired in with Steichen, would we be having the same conversations about fire everyone? Like, think about it. Like, would there be more of a pushback because it would only have been his second year?
No.
It's a good question. Because I think part of this is people are talking about, they're sending these screenshots around from like the old, what I would consider the old regime. And that's because the Colts did this to themselves. The timelines don't add up here. Like, they basically said, we're going to keep this general manager that really should be on the hot seat because of 2022. And we're going to pair him with a first-time head coach, given his toughest project of quarterback development that he's had in his entire career, let alone many coaches' career, and a 20-year-old quarterback with 13 career starts, and ask him to save him. That's basically what they did. So the roller coaster was inevitable, and then they sold us on this idea that they're a win now team and this is a win now roster when the timelines have never added up. So you have a billion different things. So like, when I think about all of that, and I think about the fact that Chris Ballard probably didn't deserve to be the general manager in 2023 anyway, but he was given that chance. If we're thinking that's what's best for the Colts, so you can have a fun offseason and sell yourself on more hope. What's actually good for the Colts long term is you have to ride this thing out until it's literally off the tracks. And what I mean by off the tracks is you aren't having to sell the house for someone like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward because you're desperate. That's not where this organization is. So like, until they get to that point, Chris Ballard has to be the general manager, and they dug that grave the second that they decided to retain him with the new head coach.
That's a good point. Landon?
See, this is, I guess, just where we like differ a little bit. I think logically what you're saying is correct. I do. I think it's the most logical approach to what they should do for the future. But at the end of the day, this is the question. Do you trust Chris Ballard to fix this going in to year 8 or year 9? You don't?
No, I don't.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're wasting another year and delaying the inevitable.
We're doing the same thing by firing him and hiring a new general manager. So
but here, see, this is where it is. I don't think it's a death sentence for Shane Steichen.
Oh, we disagree there then. Yeah, I think it's an absolute.
I think more than likely, yes. But at the end of the day, like those guys have still got to go earn it. If there's a new general manager that's hired right this year, and say he goes out, say he drafts Tyler Warren, he uses free agency to bring some more vets in, he hits on some young talent in the draft. Anthony Richardson improves this year. Shane Steichen, wakes up out of the slumber he's been in this year, and they go to the playoffs and they win the division. Is that general manager getting rid of Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen?
Yeah. What are the odds that happens?
So then,
but ask yourself what the odds.
If they don't,
there's a human element. There's a human element here.
No, hold on. Let me finish. So the odds of that happening to you are small, correct? So then, if there's no improvement for Anthony Richardson and there's no improvement for Shane Steichen, then what's the argument that they should be kept?
Say that last sentence again.
I said basically what you're saying is that. Yeah. So if there's no improvements, so even with a new GM, if there's no improvement, say they build up more talent around Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen.
With the current regime.
That's what I'm saying. It was with the new
GM. I get what you're saying.
Fire Chris Ballard. You fire Chris Ballard. Anthony Richardson, he goes in a little bit more all in this offseason. He tries to surround Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson with more talent. Specifically, like I said, I know you're a big Tyler Warren guy. So say he does all that and say they improve, right? And these guys make the playoffs next year under a new general manager. Is that new general manager firing Shane Steichen and getting rid of Anthony Richardson after a playoff?
No, but the chances
of that happening aren't big. So then what is the argument that they deserve to be kept
because the chances next
year if they don't?
I got you. So the argument for that is that the chances, because you're setting them up for failure from day one. There's a human element that we can't.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, wait, hold on. No. Hold on. There's a human element that you can't just throw out. Imagine you get a new CEO at your company, and that guy's when you get here's what people don't understand, in my opinion, is that when you get a chance to be a general manager, you don't get a second one. And if you do, you're Tom Telesco, or you're one of the rare candidates that people are willing to give a second chance on. So when you do it, they want to hire their head coach. They have their vision for their quarterback. And this is stuff that happens at those meetings. That's what happens when you get in these interviews. You have the vision for all of it. And I find it hard to believe that, one, you would find a quality candidate that believes in the current operation and is willing to risk their job status on that when they can easily sell to an owner, hey, these aren't my guys, these were your previous guys. The second part of it is that when you're Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson, these guys are the guy above you isn't attached to you. So you're under all this pressure, and find me of it working.
So you want to use the CEO analogy.
There's no precedent of that. There's no precedent. The Bears have done this for years.
Say I'm a worker and I have a new boss in front of me. He's not attached to me. He did not hire me. If I go out the next year in my job and I do not do my job,
because you're underestimating because you're not getting the resources to do it. GM and head coach creates an awkward relationship. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't they're not two siloed things. They have to work in unison. When Shane Steichen says, hey, we want to execute this scheme and we don't have the players to do it, the GM has to be in full lockstep with him to be successful. Find me a successful organization where the GM and head coach aren't aligned. Find me one. You're delaying the inevitable, and you're setting up an unrealistic environment for any.
But you're delaying the inevitable with bringing Chris Ballard back as well.
Yes and no. Yes, but at least when you start, at least when you start the reset, you don't have to deal with all these different timelines adding up. You're gonna hire.
It's like you you need to rip the Band-Aid off.
You have a better chance. Okay, fine. In my opinion, you have a better chance of making the playoffs with the current regime than you do firing just Chris Ballard and then letting Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson run it back under this impossible environment. Find me any precedent of that happening. You can't. Because I've seen the Bears do it for years and it fails. I've seen other organizations do it and it fails. If you don't have a general manager and a head coach that are fully aligned and there isn't that awkward relationship, then you can be a winning team. But if they do have that awkward relationship, you aren't winning anything. And that guy is just spending the entire season figuring out who his next coach and who the quarterback class is going to be.
Okay, but I get that argument. But my entire argument to counter that is, why are you delaying the inevitable with Chris Ballard? Like, why? Because because
you dug that grave in 2022. There is no inevitable. You dug that grave in 2022 when you decided to hire him with a new regime. So they've
already dug their grave. So what are they supposed to do?
Lie in it. That's their fault.
So lose next year? Just be done?
A new general manager is not going to do anything for you in 2025. Period. Because you're still going to have the same coach, the same roster, the same contracts. You're not going to be picking high.
I mean, they could realistically, there is a path forward for a new general manager to come in. You add to the tight end room.
It's just there's a human element. There's a human element to doing this.
I get there's a human element to it.
And it's just not realistic. It seems like a very plug and place, half-hearted thing. That's a patchwork. It's a patchwork just to see an Anthony Richardson.
That's what bringing Chris Ballard back is. It's a patchwork. You're accomplishing nothing.
That's not true. Because here's the thing: you might not be accomplishing nothing, but you're not. You're also you're setting yourself up for failure perpetual failure. You're avoiding perpetual failure. That's what you're accomplishing. When in 2022 you fired the head coach, you got rid of the veteran quarterback carousel and you were ready to draft a quarterback. You had every opportunity to start fresh and start on a new direction and start with a new general manager. You didn't take that opportunity. So you trusted him to figure this out, knowing when you drafted the rawest quarterback prospect that we have seen in years that it wouldn't take time, that it would take some time. So you're going to pull the plug after year 2 and on just the general manager and then keep the head coach and quarterback for basically a lame duck scenario with a general manager that isn't attached to any single one of you. The NFL is a lot more of, I'm in it for myself. What can I sell to the owner? So how do they sell? Hey, well, I'm signing on to believe it. When they're hiring a new general manager candidate, they're not looking for guys that are going to be attached to the quarterback and the head coach.
To avoid perpetual failure,
quality candidates
perpetual failure is what you're saying.
I'm saying putting yourself on timelines, on different timelines between the quarterback, the head coach, and the general.
Different timeline. They're already on that.
But so why continue it when you could just fire everyone when so here, listen to me. They have free agents that all expire at the end of Anthony Richardson's rookie contract. If this team is 4-12 and it warrants firing the general manager, the head coach, and then finding a new quarterback, then you absolutely do that. But right now, they're not picking high enough. The quarterback.
We're waiting 2 more years, not even just next year. We're waiting 2 more years.
Well, there's
2 years.
I didn't say that. I said
you can at the end of Anthony Richardson's rookie deal.
Yeah, but there's outs on the deals. There's outs on the deals. You just signed these guys to an extension literally last year. So there's outs on the deals that you don't have to wait the entire 2-3 more, whatever it is. But when you fire Chris Ballard, you absolutely need to do it where you're starting fresh, top to bottom. That starts with quarterback. That starts with head. So why? No, you don't, because you want Chris Ballard fired this year, but want to keep Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. You're
if it means having to clean house, I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, this is now 2 years. Has Shane Steichen regressed as a head coach? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So what has he done?
I don't think you want to be on the Who out there has a better resume developing quarterbacks and is going to find who out there? Find me a better resume. It's not Ben Johnson. That's a wide receiver.
The resume is not working. The resume is not working.
You're asking a quarterback with 13 starts to be a finished product in year 2. What are you saying?
I'm not asking to be a finished.
That's right. You said the results aren't working. So
they're not working. We're not asking him to be a franchise guy. But has there been any?
Yes, you are.
Is Anthony Richardson the same player this week as he was in that Green Bay game at the beginning of the season?
No, I don't think he's the same player.
You don't think in this game, just specifically this game? I think there was marketed improvement.
I think you're confusing the quarterback and the results a little bit. I think you're confused. He threw 2 picks. That's understandable. Patrick
The
Surtain,
result-
but
the
he
results are the results.
what? Well, I'm looking. That's not true because I'm going to look at Patrick Surtain's interception, and that's way different than throwing it up to a double covered deep ball to Alec Pierce with terrible footwork. Just screw it. That's not. Or the Chicago game when he was doing that. That there's less of that. Now the interceptions are still bad, and they're always going to happen. Like that, quarterbacks throw interceptions for the most part, unless you're in the upper echelon of guys that are on an MVP.
I'm not even talking about just interceptions. I didn't bring up interceptions. I'm not even talking about interceptions. I'm just saying. At this point, why is everybody so scared?
Chris Ballard doesn't deserve to be the general manager. We are in agreement of that.
So why is everybody so scared to just make a change, just to rip the Band-Aid off? You're just delaying.
Then you better be done with it. You want to be done with it. You want to go forward.
Sometimes we have to get rid of good to find great.
I agree with you, but that doesn't.
Why does this not apply?
You're missing my entire point. Is that I agree with you that Chris Ballard has not done enough to deserve to be the general manager, but they made that decision in 2022, so you can't just rip off bits and pieces of things you don't like because you think you know what the problem is. That's the issue. You rip the entire thing off. So you better say there's no justification to clean parts of the house. It's a different discussion to say, hey, you want to pull the entire thing because you're sick of this, or am I going to let it ride? Those seems like the 2 logical options for me. So you can't pick bits and pieces because we're playing Madden. That's not how it works. So I'm
not playing Madden here. Nobody's saying
you want the. Okay, sorry. I apologize for that analogy if that's not. But see what I'm saying? You can't just take the general manager and then leave the head coach and quarterback in a lame duck scenario because you're asking for 4-12 and just another terrible season.
And so what are you asking for if you keep Chris Ballard?
That remains to be seen. But then you better be cool cleaning the entire house. You should have asked yourself that question. You should have asked yourself that question.
They should have, and they didn't, and they've got more of the same. So if you're comfortable with giving them,
you want Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward and have to give up multiple first-round picks for no reason because of it. No, I don't see the reason to. There's no reason to. You already made this decision.
You can make a change at GM and evaluate next season with a new GM.
No, you can't. No, you cannot. No, you cannot. Because the second you hire a new general manager, you're making the statement right now that we're pretty much done with every single one of you. We're gonna clean house. We're gonna find a new head coach, and we're gonna find a new quarterback because there's no way that it's just not realistic. Because any quality general manager isn't taking a job where they don't have their hands on the coach or the quarterback. They're just not, unless they totally have insane conviction in this and then basically are willing to do a one to, because at this point now the coach and the quarterback are on the hot seat. So any quarterback general manager taking the job is going to
what have they done
to either sell to the owner. I believe in it. What?
That's what I'm not understanding is what has Shane Steichen done to deserve not being on the hot seat?
I don't think did you see 2022 and realize that you were a game off, a couple plays off from beating the Houston Texans and going to the playoffs with Gardner Minshew? Is that not impressive? He was a coach of the year candidate. Get out of here with what are you talking about?
I'm talking about right now. I'm not talking about 2022. I'm talking about right now. You just said earlier that he is regret.
So you're telling me he does not deserve a shot to say this year stunk. How do I go back to the drawing board? Because if not, you just want to live on the coaching carousel until you can find the 1-year wonder that puts this group into a good situation. Because it's not
about being a 1-year wonder. It's about being.
You're saying you want to plug in the entire thing.
We're all okay with this constant mediocrity because we all tend to have this belief in our head of well, if he just gets another shot, this is the year. Or if he gets another shot, this is the year. And we've been on this wheel for so long where we buy into the offseason, we buy into the process, and we buy into all the, we don't want to be negative. We want to be positive. We want to do all this. But the results are the results at the end of the day. And this is a results-based business. This is a results-based thing. And at the end of the day, Shane Steichen has not shown me enough this season, just this season,
2 seasons of maybe 9-8 potentially.
I'm not saying, yeah,
I think that's I think here's a good litmus test.
It's not necessarily like in an ideal world, you would love for them to have taken a step forward this year and made the playoffs. And I understand Anthony Richardson's role. I understand that maybe more than anybody. I get it. But at the end of the day, what have you shown me enough that warrants me completely selling out another season to keep you? Another season. Because now this, like I said,
I'll tell you one. You
roll with Shane Steichen next year. You roll with Anthony Richardson, which is fine. I understand that argument. You roll with Chris Ballard. What's the best case scenario in that? Everybody figures it out.
So okay,
again,
so here's
let me go through this again.
Okay, so here's what I will say. Here's a good litmus test for should I fire a head coach. If I let go of Shane Steichen, is the league going to be clamoring to hire him?
As a head coach or as an offensive coordinator?
As a head coach, because I think the answer. I don't think 2 roller coaster years in Indianapolis with the Ross quarterback prospect we have seen is going to.
He gets a head coach job immediately?
Not without a question. Without a question.
Yeah, I disagree. I think
without a question. Without a question, and it's not close. People will not forget about what he did with Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts, taking them to a Super Bowl.
As a head coach.
It's 2 roller coaster years with the Ross quarterback prospect that half the league doesn't believe.
He was the quarterback coach for Justin Herbert. He wasn't even the offensive play caller.
Who cares? So you're questioning his resume?
No,
so why were you happy with the hire in the first place?
Being a head coach is completely different than being a play caller or a quarterback coach. Those are completely different things.
And how many head coaches on their second opportunity are a lot better than their first? Look at Dan Quinn.
Well, most of them.
So listen. I don't have the.
I am not saying that I think Shane Steichen doesn't deserve another shot. In an ideal world, I do.
What are you saying? Like, because it sounds like you want people pulled, you want people fired, and you want it now. And like I'm telling you that I don't think that's smart to do it right now. That's the core of this argument. Is that I agree with you that Chris Ballard doesn't technically deserve a job to start in 2025. I also think it's completely unwise to just either pull the plug now or do it again. He's going to be on the hot seat.
I get that. And like I said, in an ideal world, you're absolutely correct. But nothing that Chris Ballard or the people he's hired or the people that he's chosen to bring into this organization over the last 8 years, regardless of whether it's Frank Reich, regardless if it's Shane Steichen, regardless whoever it is.
We're in agreement of that. I'm saying that
not done enough for me to justify sitting here on December 17th of 2025, and we are sitting here having the exact same conversation.
And we have had every single year. So Landon, your anger and your frustration, that should be taken out for Jim Irsay for doing this in 2022 because you signed up for this. You asked for all of this. That's really what happened. Like, if you think about it, that was the biggest mistake. That was the biggest mistake.
So what's you signed up for it. And I totally understand that. And we agree on that. We agreed at the time that he should have been fired after 2022. No GM, even most GMs don't survive the Carson Wentz situation. It's almost unheard of to survive the Matt Ryan year. Unheard of. No GM survives that. Somehow he did. We are in agreement there. But what's the benefit of running it back again? Like that's
because this is the brain trust that you put trust in to make it work. So right now, and they haven't shown you that. But what's a better option? You fire. Okay, look, give me a second to explain this. We are not in agreement that finding a new general manager is going to make any much of a difference in 2025.
It might not.
I think we're in disagreement there. You think that how many wins do you think that adds them? Because I think it subtracts wins.
It might not, but it's better than.
So that's the whole predicament, right? So there's no benefit to hiring a new general manager.
And there's no benefit to bringing Chris Ballard back.
I agree. So why not wait to this thing? As much as it sucks, you did this to yourself. Why not? I think you have a better chance to bet on the group than you have now than to put yourself into more organizational dysfunction when you look at this organization and there's already so much.
I think it could be a very
there's no in my mind, there is no positive way that you fire Chris Ballard that you wouldn't pull the plug and basically say, Anthony Richardson, who's raw and was supposed to be given more, you're going to have to produce in the next year. It's over because
you can't ask for accountability whenever there hasn't been
any. That's a generic statement. You're going to have to specify accountability.
So like you roll back with everything the same next year. You roll it out again. And it's not even just next year. Like you're talking about like through Anthony Richardson's rookie deal.
There's outs in the contract. I'm just saying that's the only clear timeline this organization has, that almost it's not on accident that every star player is pretty much done at the end of Anthony Richardson's rookie contract. It's not an accident. Like they didn't do that. They didn't do those contracts.
I know it's not an accident.
It's just not. So that's the only timeline.
Who's the GM that signed that? Who's the GM that did that? Chris Ballard. So you're giving him
who's the owner who's paying it? Jim Irsay. So like it's not that Chris Ballard doesn't have free reign to do years on contracts. It'd be silly to say otherwise. Like Jim Irsay is part of the reason that happened, and I feel it's certainly a hypothesis.
Okay. All right,
so 99%.
We're on the same page. We're punting the Colts until 2025, 2026, whatever.
We're crossing our fingers that this regime figures it out. Yeah.
Okay.
And that is
we are all on the hill.
I'm not okay with that. And I think majority of people aren't okay with that. And that's okay.
I don't know. I would say, judging from Twitter, I would say there was actually more people than I thought that actually would be okay with that. Honestly, I'm punting. That's the thing. Like the Colts are in a no-win situation in my mind because the quarterback class isn't good enough to reset. You are asking for 4-12 with a new regime anyway. Do you want to be with
Richardson next year? You can evaluate him. It's okay.
No, you cannot. You absolutely cannot, because you are going in that the general manager is one of his guys and his quarterback. And that's the next time that you reset this thing, when they are in a position where the wheels have fallen.
But if that guy shows to be the guy and that next year, then you have the guy. Like even if it's not your guy, Andrew Luck.
Go look at general managers. Okay, so
nobody's getting rid of Andrew Luck. If Anthony Richardson goes out next year and proves he's a franchise quarterback,
but that's asking things that they never should, that aren't realistic. Like you can't hold Anthony Richardson to an Andrew Luck timeline. That's crazy.
It's not holding him to an Andrew Luck. It's just saying
drafting Anthony Richardson in your mind.
If Anthony Richardson comes out next year and balls out and improves, and he's a franchise guy and he lifts this team to the playoffs, even as a new GM,
not going to happen.
Tell me that new GM
not happening
does not want Anthony Richardson.
It's not happening.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a good one. Do you feel better with 4-12 or 4-12 regime that might? I feel better with 4-12 with this current regime where they can slash the entire thing and then make those changes with a whole new regime
I'm on the other side.
I would not feel great. I would not feel great about 4-12. I think you're lying to yourself if you do think that, because you would just think that they made a failure of a head coaching hire. That would be what I would. I don't think there's anyone, because the head coach ain't going to get up there and say, "Hey guys, we're going to suck this year. We're getting rid of everyone. It's going to be a 2-year thing before we can even start our plan." It's not happening. It's just not happening.
And wins this division, then it is what it is. Shane Steichen, that's what I said at the beginning of the year. Everybody on this team can prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. That's all I ask. That's all I've asked for the last few years. Prove me wrong. Show me that in the worst division in football, again, for the worst division in football, that you can finally put it together and win football games when it matters. They have not done that.
We are I'm not trying to say that Chris, don't. I hope that people aren't confusing.
Not just Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard selects the guys, but at the end of the day, Shane Steichen's the head coach.
We're all in agreement. We're all in agreement that Chris. The first line of the second thing that I tweeted out today was that Chris Ballard does not deserve to be the general manager in 2025, and he didn't deserve to be the general manager in 2023. This is the mistake that they made when they retained him, and now they have to lie in it because it doesn't make sense to you don't have the quarterback to reset. Quarterbacks are reset with head coaches, general managers, and quarterbacks. That's how it works. And right now, you would need to find
unless you have one, unless you come into a situation where you
unless you have the Andrew Luck situation. I think we can be in agreement.
Well, it's not just luck.
They don't have that.
You've got a guy.
So when they like the whole thing is like, what was like.
But that's I guess where we're differing is because that's what I'm saying is like
for Colts phone ring. Do you really believe Ballard can fix this mess when his process has led to nothing but mediocrity and underachievement? No, I don't. I don't have much confidence. Is it impossible? No. Is it? Do I have much confidence in it? Not necessarily. But when you look at like if I'm an organizational decision maker and not just some fan yelling into a microphone, which we're doing right now, and I'm trying to put myself in the position of those guys, I look at what would you do when you really have to consider everything? What would you do? Because I agree, no one's more frustrated than they are, obviously, about the results. They haven't been good enough. They're aware they aren't good enough. But when you look at how am I going to do it? Because they want to know, what do I have in Anthony Richardson? What do I have in my head coach? What do I have? They know what they have at this point in the general manager. They obviously had a little bit more hubris that Chris Ballard was going to turn this thing around quicker. But the whole root of this problem, which I've tried to explain, is that you have timelines that don't make sense. One needed results right away. Chris Ballard, as soon as you retained him, needed results right away. Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson were literally never going to achieve that. We just, because we're fans and we're hopeful, we hope that they would. But if you think about it realistically, it was not going to be possible for them to achieve all this. I don't know. It was just not going to be possible. That's the whole situation. So when you are going to make a total organizational reset, I would prefer that the Colts do it in a single year, similar to how the Commanders did it, just without the owner. A new general manager who hired his head coach and drafted their quarterback. That's how I think smart organizations do things. I don't think you pick pieces and then that's how you end up with potentially the Raiders, where Anthony Pierce was pretty much guaranteed the job and then you hired Tom Telesco. I think that's how you ended up how the Bears have been, where they've had this cycle of firing the quarterback, this general manager and head coach after the rookie year of the quarterback, and then you have a lame duck continuously. I'm sure there's more to think about, but that we could bring up as examples. But I think about what's smart. I don't Chris Ballard doesn't give me confidence. I think I had more confidence after 2023 because I thought that was impressive when you think about how just disgusting 22 was. But now it's like I have very little. It's not zero, but I have very little. When you think about the next step forward, I don't think it's, hey, I'm just pissed at these results. Let's get rid of Chris Ballard. Let's be smart about how you're going to set the franchise so you're not back here again. That's really where the perspective that I'm coming from is. I agree that Chris Ballard doesn't deserve to have a job. I agree that it's miserable. How do you get there? Would you rather have one season? How can we not be these perpetual loser organizations? That's how I'm thinking about it. And loser organizations do stuff like that, where they cut ties too early. They don't think in terms of timelines. And that's where the Colts have really gotten themselves into. So that's where my perspective is coming from, where I agree it's miserable. It's not fun. It's ugly of a decision. I can't believe I've said that multiple times. When you think about the general managers and the head coach are due to philosophies, they must mesh. I agree. I couldn't agree more. When you think about every successful team, they have that. So I don't think there's a single it would have to be a unicorn situation for the general manager for them to fire Chris Ballard, for them to keep their current regime.
Okay. So just for, shits and giggles here, say they get rid of Chris Ballard and they promote Ed Dodds to GM.
I guess I can't rule that out because Jeff Saturday was the head coach. I just don't think it's realistic. I'm
just saying, he's very highly thought of as a general manager. He's a guy that's familiar with what's been going on. Him and Chris Ballard, they have very different philosophies on how they approach things. But he is a guy that's also familiar with Shane Steichen, familiar with Anthony Richardson. Why is that not a viable option? Why do you have to keep
It's a great question. It's a great question.
And it's not just for the Colts job. This guy is highly sought around. To be honest,
I agree. And
he could have left last year.
Or Morocco Brown, for that example. He's been GM interviews for the last couple of years.
You know what? That's a great question. I think that's a little bit. I agree. I haven't thought that through, so I'm thinking it through right now. Because I had, to be honest, that's not something. I don't think that that's an orthodox thing that
Look at how
happened.
high a guy like Morocco Brown was on Anthony Richardson. Loved him. Was probably one of the main reasons.
I think that's a rare situation that I could get behind. I'm gonna be honest. I think that's a rare situation I could get behind. If you think that would change things,
These guys are well thought of around the league as general managers. They're familiar with Shane Steichen. They're familiar with Anthony Richardson. They can come in, have a different philosophy than Chris Ballard has had the last 8 years that has led to nothing. And they could maybe steer this in a different direction, because I'm not sure that I'm cool on just punting the next 2 years and just going all in on 2027 or 2028. Like
I agree. I just think
I think it's in your building right now.
It's easier. Can we agree that it's easier for us to say it than to actually do it when it comes to?
Well, yeah. I mean, none of us are in the NFL. We're sitting on the internet right now. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think there's a path forward that they can take that doesn't have to just involve Chris Ballard. Like, I don't think you can sit there and be just complacent with no accountability for, like, what? Like, I just can't for the life of me understand going 10 years and being okay with this. Especially when you have guys that are interviewing for highly sought after GM jobs in your own building.
That's actually the one thing that I think, if you're going to decide to make a move,
a great point.
maybe that I don't think it's realistic, but I think that is logical if you're going to do that, because I also don't know if they would take those jobs, because you think about, like, you don't get a second shot at GM. So, like, you're basically still attached to the current regime. Like, if you didn't believe in Chris Ballard, you're going to pull someone from his staff that's probably one of his confidants and have major roles in the same decisions that are being made. I guess that's my only argument against it. Like,
well, they have roles
in the same cloth. They make the same decisions.
So like Ed Dodds, for example. Like, that's a guy that I've been a big proponent of. Much more of a throwback guy, right? No nonsense, very aggressive. You know, he's willing to make tough decisions and tough moves. But, you know, yes, technically, does he have some kind of loyalty to Chris Ballard? We don't know, right?
That's where I think that's where the realism comes in.
Yeah, right? Like, is he loyal to that? Maybe. But how many GMs, like, say you get a chance to become a GM, you're a guy that's comfortable with this team, you think that you know what's best to put them over the hump, and you know that you have a general or an owner that is going to be, by any stretch of the imagination, the most patient owner in football, for better or for worse, normally for worse. Why? I mean, I don't know.
Well, so, like,
it's hard. These guys go their whole lives looking for.
How much does season ticket member opt-outs? Oh, I can actually think I can speak on this. I would say yes and no, because is the actual numbers there, or are people just talking about it? Because I think a lot of the times, and I think when you, like, take a deep breath, is people are like, oh, I'm never watching this team again. No, you're not. You'll be watching them. Like, that's how this thing goes. Like, in the miserable 2022 season, there's, like, maybe you're not as excited and you're painful, but, like, for the most part, like, you're still watching the team. So, like, a lot of the times that doesn't play as much of a factor than maybe you would think. And I think that fans potentially think that they might have a little bit more control than what happens in those buildings. They certainly do. Don't get me wrong. I think there are organizations that I know pay close attention to that sort of stuff. I'm not sure that it's necessarily the case in Indianapolis. So we'll see. If they draft Tyler Warren, I'll change my mind, because there's enough people that are on Tyler Warren that if they draft him, then I'm like, we run the franchise at this point. So, but no, I don't think that's the case. If you can't sell Ballard anymore, you can't convince the majority of the fan base one of his closest aides is a successor. I get it. I get everyone's, like, I think it's stupid. Like, I just don't think it's logical to like, you made this decision. And, like, when you think about what they're thinking right now, they've probably I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. It's a tough thing to say. But like when they made this decision, like 2022 was these years are such big years because if they had thought differently and we were talking about a new general manager, I don't think we'd be on here with this. We'd be obviously upset and angry. But I think that you could talk more people off the carousel than maybe it is right now. But the fact that they decided to retain him is they wanted to see Anthony Richardson. Like, there's no way that you can, like, Chris Ballard. I think is if he thought his job was on the line, he is trading the farm, or at least any logical person is trading the farm for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud because they were more pro ready. Like that wasn't like that was like consensus opinion. That when you took Anthony Richardson, it was going to take this time and you were going to go through these pains. I think when you benched him,
what really sucked was the year he got injured. That's what really threw this off, was that injury with Richardson.
The 2023.
Yeah,
definitely. I think that's part of it too, because I think that's what honestly had me so impressed with Shane Steichen, and like why I'm like a supporter is when you look through that 2023 season, like this team was. I mean, we saw like this team was a.
I mean, but things happen in a vacuum, man. Josh McDaniels made the playoffs with Tim Tebow as a head coach. That doesn't mean he's a great head coach.
I agree, but I also think that you can make that same argument that this year happens in a vacuum. So, like, because he's done
it all does.
So that's why I'm like, I think it's a little too early to pull the like. I think you hired Shane Steichen for one reason, because I think there was some rumors going around that we can't confirm, but there was definitely some rumors that he wasn't the consensus candidate. But they ultimately arrived on him because he was the best developer of quarterbacks that there was currently on the market, and they felt really good, like really good about that. I mean, that's obvious from Jim Irsay calling him the next Don Shula. As hilarious as that probably seems now. I
mean, I wanted Shane Steichen.
I did too. But
at the end of the day, you've got to show me, cool. Was last year
I think I'd be willing to change my tune.
Giving credit for almost. That's just where I'm at. I'm tired of just being almost.
I agree, and I think that there's a part of me that like where I get. I think if you want to talk,
they almost won this game. They almost did this.
I agree, and I agree with you. I would say that I agree. I would also say that there's context that does need to be put. You do need to look at context to a degree. Like, look when you go look at like how does true dysfunction, like Gardner Minshew was playing good football down the end of the stretch miraculously. He's gone to Las Vegas and totally flopped and got benched multiple times. They didn't win. They didn't win anything. Shane Steichen hasn't won anything. He hasn't really won a big game either. Like I guess the two big games that he's won have both been against the Steelers. If there's anything that he can do, he can beat the Steelers.
Justin Fields and Kenny.
Yeah, and Mitch Trubisky too. But I mean, a big game's a big game. But like, I don't know. It's tough. I'm not as high on Shane Steichen as I was 6 months ago, but I'm still very high on him. I think that 2 years after, I mean, there were points that people wanted to run Dan Campbell out of town. And I think it's like the ownership got in front of that and they stood. The only difference was it was with a GM that he was aligned with. So they stood on the entire thing. But the fact that you have this Chris Ballard is why Jim Irsay, it's hard for Jim Irsay to stand on and say, no, we are sticking with them. We believe that this is going to be a process and we're going to stick through it. That's what this organization really needs.
The thing with the Dan Campbell thing is each year they improved. There was no regression in that. They didn't have 1 year where they.
Well, we're not sure that there's 3 games for them to prove that there's no regression. They also didn't have to bench their quarterback, and they also didn't have their quarterback. Unless someone can prove me wrong, they did not have to bench their quarterback or have a season-ending injury at quarterback. So unless I'm proved wrong there, it's not an apples to oranges. But I think that giving up on
Holmes is like the anti-Chris Ballard.
Why? But
Brad Holmes,
that doesn't have to do with anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so
love the analogies.
That's kind of. I think we've talked until we're blue in the face, but that's how I do feel about it. It's doesn't feel great. I don't necessarily love it, but like when you look at like how do we avoid not becoming these teams that are consistently looking for new head coaches, consistently looking for new quarterbacks, consistently looking for to sell their team on this is the year, this is the staff, this is the general manager. How do we avoid that?
Basically, what they've done during the Chris Ballard era.
Yes, but
there's no avoiding it. That's what we've done.
But yeah. But multiple like they haven't reset. They haven't no, hold on, different. They haven't reset. What I'm saying is like what two teams that have hired their like the Jets do, where they've hired their like fifth head coach and their fifth quarterback, and they sell people that this is different. This is so different. And the only way that I think it makes sense is you find a GM, head coach, and quarterback that are in lockstep together. Like you just can't pick pieces and parts. So because you stood on the table for Chris Ballard in 2022, it's tough for you to abandon him in 2024. And I don't think the grass is greener when you consider putting more organizational dysfunction by doing more unorthodox things. You ride this thing out with Anthony Richardson. It's not a when, it's an if it fails, because it's a little bit too early in year 2, really year 1 for him. If it fails, then we'll be talking here in a year and I'll have a totally different tone. But the situation that they have put themselves in is that jobs need to be on the line because you stuck with a general manager that should have been gone years ago. And we are all in agreement with that. There is no reason Chris Ballard should be the general manager, and he shouldn't have been the general manager in 2023. But I don't think it's wise to just get rid of him and then scapegoat him as the problem when the whole regime is to blame, sink or swim. And that's how you go about this. And you think about all this current team is on a year is on Anthony Richardson's deal for an accident. So in my mind, if I'm putting myself into Jim Irsay when he was constructing all those deals, is he said Anthony Richardson is either going to be our franchise quarterback or he's going to be a mistake and we're going to be looking at it again. And we're going to be looking for a new head coach, a new regime. They were drafted to make this guy great. And if they can't make this guy great, then we'll go find someone else. And that's what I think he's thinking. So it sucks. It's annoying. It's painful in all those sorts of ways, but they're not moving off Chris Ballard until they're ready to move to blow up the entire thing, not just bits and pieces of it. So that's kind of my.
It's a fair point, but in the reality of it, at the end of the season, when they give us that good old presser, we'll be right back to square one with this conversation. But
no one's going to buy anything he's saying. Like he'll get up there, he'll say, "Oh, I failed. I didn't do good enough." They're going to ask him all about the benching. He's going to tell everyone what he thinks about the benching, why it was a mistake, why he's not a good general manager, and they'll go up there and he'll either do one of two things. He'll bounce back from this year. He'll go be aggressive in free agency. He'll go make moves to improve this team, or it will be an absolute disaster. Or we're in the same spot a year later, and then you say, with a better quarterback class, let's blow up and reset the whole thing.
I trust Colts media to give us the questions. They've been on the road, so they're going to ask the questions for us. So we'll wait for that time to get here. But that's pretty much our review on the game and our current stance on the situation with the regime. But you guys let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and we'll be back with you later on this week with the preview of the next week's matchup, the Indianapolis Colts. It's going to be an interesting one, but you guys stay tuned. Turn on your notice for all platforms. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. That's Colts Film Room. That's Landon. This is Culture Shock. We will see you guys. Stay tuned and have a good week.